The throne room fell silent when the human ambassador's jaw tightened. Commander Velric of the Sovereign Guard noticed it first. That subtle shift in posture, the way Captain Sarah Chen's fingers stopped their diplomatic drumming against her thigh and went completely still. 30 years protecting the Janara royal family had taught Velric to read threats in the space between heartbeats. This was a threat. "With respect, Counselor Thrain," Chen said, her voice carrying that peculiar human flatness that preceded violence, "we've been patient for 6 months." The Counselor's chromatic crest flared purple with dismissal. "Your colony worlds can wait another season." The Council's trade priorities. Children are dying. 3 words. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. Velric's secondary hearts quickened as he catalogued exit points, weapon placements, the 16 other species representatives scattered across the crystalline chamber. Young Princess Liara, only 7 cycles old, sat beside her mother on the lesser throne, her small fingers gripping the armrest. Queen Sashara's expression remained carved from diplomatic stone, but Velric saw her pupils dilate. She'd heard it too, that edge beneath Chen's control. "Captain Chen," Thrain continued, "oblivious or uncaring. Every species faces resource allocation challenges. The Galactic Council cannot simply 43 children yesterday." Chen's hand moved to her tablet. Not a weapon. Velric's grip on his pulse staff eased fractionally. 37 the day before. All under 5 years old. Bacterial infection from contaminated water processors. The replacement parts sit in your warehouses on Corvin Station while you debate whether humanity's newest colonies deserve priority shipping status. "The proper channels exist for such requests," Counselor Vreen of the Morthani chimed in, his gill slits fluttering with bureaucratic satisfaction. "Protocol dictates," Chen laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Velric shifted his weight, angling toward the Queen. Liara had gone very still, her young eyes fixed on the human ambassador with the unsettling focus children sometimes possessed. Protocol. Chen's smile held no warmth. "Do you know what humans call protocol when children die because of paperwork? We call it practice for what comes after." The Queen finally spoke, her voice the practiced calm of rulers who'd navigated 1,000 such tensions. "Captain Chen, perhaps we might adjourn to discuss this matter in private council?" "No. 1 word. 1 syllable." The entire room inhaled as one. "Your Majesty," Chen continued, and at least she maintained that courtesy, "with profound respect, we're done with private councils. We're done with subcommittees. We're done watching our children suffocate on planets we were assured the Council would support." She turned, addressing the full chamber now. "Humanity joined this galactic community 50 years ago because we believed in something greater than ourselves. We followed your laws, we accepted your borders. We paid our tithes and sat through your ceremonies and learned 16 languages of protocol and respect." Velric saw it building, that peculiar human thing that other species called irrationality, but which he'd learned to recognize as something far more dangerous. Calculation wearing emotion's mask, and in return, Chen said quietly, "You've given us forms, and committees, and very polite explanations about why our dead don't matter quite as much as others." "This is preposterous," Thrain sputtered. "Your species' colonial expansion was approved under strict resource allocation frameworks. You cannot simply demand, 'We're not demanding.'" Chen's interruption cut like a blade. "We're informing. As of this moment, all human vessels in Council space are being recalled. All human personnel at Council facilities have 30 standard hours to evacuate. All trade agreements, defense pacts, and mutual aid treaties are suspended pending review." The chamber erupted. Voices crashed against the vaulted ceiling in 16 languages of outrage, confusion, diplomatic horror. Velric remained focused on Chen, on the Queen, on Princess Lara, who had stood from her throne. "Mama," the child's voice somehow cut through the chaos. "Is Captain Chen leaving?" The Queen's hand moved to her daughter's shoulder, but her eyes never left Chen. "Captain, you realize what you're proposing is withdrawal from the Galactic Council?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "We realize exactly what it means." Chen's jaw set. "What none of you seem to realize is what it means when humans run out of patience." "You cannot survive without Council support," Counselor Thrain declared, finding his authority again. "Your colonies rely on Council trade routes, Council protection, Council will manage." 2 words that somehow echoed louder than all the shouting. Velric saw it then, reflected in faces around the room. That moment when species who'd viewed humanity as eager, slightly backward newcomers suddenly remembered older stories. Stories from before first contact, human history written in ash and blood, and the stubborn refusal to accept extinction. Princess Liara pulled free of her mother's grip and walked down the throne steps. Protocol screamed against it. Velik moved to intercept, but the Queen's subtle hand signal stopped him. The child crossed the space between throne and ambassador, while the galaxy's representatives watched in stunned silence. She stopped directly in front of Chen, small and regal and impossibly brave. "My tutor says humans fought each other for thousands of years before the stars," Liara said clearly. "She says you stopped because you found better things to fight for." Chen looked down at the princess, and something shifted in her expression. Not softening. Humans didn't soften when their children were dying, but recognition. Understanding passing between the very young and the very determined. "Your tutor was wise, Your Highness. What will you fight now, Captain Chen?" The question hung in the air like a blade balanced on its edge. Every being in that chamber leaned forward, waiting. Chen knelt, bringing herself to eye level with the child. "Everything that stands between our children and survival, Princess. Every locked warehouse.
Every trade restriction. Every species that mistakes our patience for weakness."
She paused, and her next words carried to every corner of the hall. Everything. The Queen descended her throne. The first transport ships had already departed human colonies along the outer rim when Queen Sashara reached her daughter's side. Varric watched communication officers throughout the chamber frantically accessing data feeds, their expressions shifting from disbelief to alarm as reports cascaded in. The humans weren't bluffing. They were already moving. "Captain Chen," the Queen said, her voice carrying the weight of a civilization that had ruled the council chambers for 3,000 years. "You would abandon 50 years of alliance over a shipment of water processors?" Chen rose to her feet, her movements controlled, deliberate. "Your Majesty, with respect, it stopped being about water processors the moment Councillor Thrain called our dead children a resource allocation challenge." Her gaze swept across the assembled representatives. "We came to you with evidence, medical reports, population statistics, death certificates with names and ages and the precise timestamps when they stopped breathing. And you gave us committee assignments." "The Council has procedures," Vreen interjected weakly. "Established protocols that ensure fair distribution. 43 children died while you ensured fairness." Chen's voice remained level, which somehow made it worse. "Would you like their names, Counselor?" "I have them memorized. Emma Torres, age 4. Jacob Okonkwo, age 3. Lin Shen," her voice caught just for a heartbeat, age 2. "No relation to me, but that stopped mattering somewhere around victim number 30. Velric studied the room's dynamics with a warrior's eye. The Morthani representatives had clustered together, gills fluttering in agitation. The Keltheran delegation whispered among themselves, their crystalline bodies refracting light in patterns he'd learned to associate with fear. Even Councillor Thrain's chromatic crest had faded to a muted gray. Only the Queen maintained her composure, though Varric caught the minute tremor in her primary hand. "You cannot possibly believe humanity can survive without council infrastructure. Your colonies are vulnerable, your military scattered across 372 worlds," Chen interrupted. "With a combined population of 40 billion, 17 million active military personnel, and the industrial capacity to build whatever we need without asking permission." She paused. "We didn't come to the stars unprepared, Your Majesty. We came hoping we wouldn't need to be." Princess Liara tugged at her mother's ceremonial robes. "Mama, the captain's eyes are sad." The observation silenced the room more effectively than any threat. The child was right. Beneath Chen's diplomatic armor, behind the controlled fury, something grieved. The Queen knelt beside her daughter, matching Chen's earlier gesture. "Lyra, do you understand what's happening? Captain Chen is keeping her children safe." The princess spoke with the simple certainty of the young. "Like you would for me." From across the chamber, Councillor Thrain found his voice again. "This is emotional manipulation, using a child to..." "Counselor." She remained kneeling, one hand on her daughter's shoulder, her eyes fixed on Chen. "Tell me, Captain. If I ordered Commander Vilric to expedite those water processors right now, if I personally ensured they reached your colonies within the week, would you stay?" The chamber held its breath. Chen's expression didn't change. "No, Your Majesty." Shocked murmurs rippled through the delegates. Even Velric felt surprise tighten his secondary hearts. "Then what?" the Queen asked softly. "Would be sufficient. Proof that it won't happen again." Chen's hands remained steady at her sides, not just to us, to any species. Because today it's human children dying while you debate. Tomorrow it might be Keltherin hatchlings or Morthani spawn, or her gaze dropped to Liara. Young princesses who need medicine that's stuck in a warehouse somewhere because the right forms weren't filed. You're proposing to restructure the entire council emergency response system, Counselor Vreen said incredulously. Do you have any idea how long that would take? The legal frameworks alone, 6 months. Chen pulled her tablet, swiped through data with practiced efficiency. I'm sending you our proposal now. Humans excel at rapid logistical deployment. We've had considerable practice with our own disasters. We're offering to build and maintain emergency supply networks across council space, medical, food, water, power. All prepositioned, all accessible with a single emergency declaration, no committees required. The cost would be astronomical, Thrain protested. We'll fund it. Silence crashed over the chamber like a wave. Entirely? The Queen rose slowly, her expression unreadable. We'll take contributions from any species willing to participate, but humanity will guarantee baseline funding and operational control. Chen's voice carried absolute conviction. We've already allocated the resources. Construction begins whether we're in the council or not. We'll protect our own colonies regardless. But we'd prefer to protect everyone. Varric watched the Queen's face, reading the calculations behind her eyes. 30 years of service had taught him to recognize when Sashara encountered something that didn't fit her understanding of the galaxy's power structures. Princess Liara spoke into the silence. Captain Chen, if you leave, who will teach me about earth flowers? You promised to tell me about roses. The human ambassador's control finally cracked, just slightly. Her eyes glistened. I did promise that, didn't I, Your Highness? You did. Liara crossed the remaining distance between them, taking Chen's hand with the fearless trust of childhood. And humans keep promises. My tutor said that too. She said it's why you're dangerous. Chen knelt again, meeting the child's eyes. Your tutor sounds very wise. What else did she say? That humans are very good at forgiving, but only once. The princess tilted her head, genuinely curious. Is this your once? The question hit like a pulse blast. Villic saw it strike home in Chen's expression, saw the same realization dawn across the faces of every being in that chamber. They'd used up humanity's patience. All of it. 50 years of tolerance for bureaucracy and casual dismissal and children dying while committees deliberated. Yes, Your Highness. Chen's voice was gentle but absolute. This is our once. The Queen moved forward, her presence commanding even in approach. Captain Chen, look at me. She waited until the human met her gaze. I cannot speak for the full council. I cannot promise immediate reform. What I can promise is that the Janara Empire will sponsor your proposal, will commit resources to its implementation, and will stand with humanity in demanding emergency protocols that value life over procedure. She paused. Is that enough to buy time for trust to rebuild? Chen straightened slowly. Around them, the chamber erupted in protest. Thrain's chromatic crest flashing angry crimson, Vreen's gills sealing in shock, a dozen other species voicing outrage at this break in protocol. But Velric only watched the human, waiting for her response. I need to make a call, Chen said finally. The Queen nodded. Commander Varric will escort you to a secure communications suite. As Velric moved to Chen's side, Princess Liara squeezed the human's hand one more time. Will you come back and tell me about roses? Chen looked down at the child, and something in her expression softened just enough to be called hope. I'll come back, Your Highness. I promise. Good. Liara released her hand and returned to her mother's side. Every centimeter a princess. Because humans keep their promises. Vellic guided Chen through side corridors, away from the chaos of the main chamber. They walked in silence until reaching the secure suite, its walls lined with quantum-shielded communication arrays. Commander, Chen said as he activated the privacy protocols, your queen just committed political suicide. The other council members will crucify her for this. Her Majesty, Velric replied calmly, has ruled for 43 years. She knows exactly what she's doing. Captain, what did you really hope to accomplish today? Chen's smile was tired but genuine. To remind you all that patience isn't weakness, and that humans are very, very good at building things, her expression hardened, and even better at tearing them down when they stop working. Vellic nodded slowly. Make your call, Captain, but know this. If you return to that chamber and reject the Queen's offer, nothing will stop what comes next. I know. Chen turned to the communication array. That's exactly what I'm calling to prevent. The commander left her alone with her choices, returning to the throne room where the galaxy's representatives still shouted over each other. He took his position beside the Queen's throne as Princess Liara climbed back into her seat. "Commander Velic," the child whispered, "are we going to have a war?" "I don't know, Your Highness. Will Captain Chen come back?" Velic looked toward the corridor where the human had disappeared, thinking about all the ways this moment could fracture into violence or crystallize into something better. "I believe she will. Good." Liara settled into her throne with satisfaction. "I want to hear about roses." The hour passed in tense debate, the council chambers fragmenting into factional arguments about sovereignty, resource allocation, and the precedent of allowing any species to effectively dictate emergency protocols. Velric monitored it all with a warrior's detachment, tracking threat levels and alliance patterns. When Captain Chen returned, the room fell silent immediately. She walked to the center of the chamber, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. The Queen leaned forward slightly on her throne. "I've spoken with our colonial administration," Chen announced, "and with our military command, and with the families on Valence Colony who buried their children yesterday." She paused, and Varric saw the weight of those conversations in her eyes. "Humanity will remain in the Galactic Council."
Conditionally?
Conditionally? Counselor Thrain's crest flared indignant orange. "The emergency supply network begins construction immediately, with full operational authority vested in a new council division, one with human leadership and cross-species oversight, but with no committee approval required for emergency deployments." Chen's voice carried the weight of non-negotiation. "Water processors, medical supplies, and emergency infrastructure components will be prepositioned at every colony world, all colony worlds, regardless of species, within 6 standard months. And if we refuse?" Vreen asked. "Then humanity withdraws completely, builds the network anyway for our own colonies, and the Council can continue explaining to its members why some children matter more than others." Chen's gaze swept the assembly. "But I don't think you'll refuse. Because even though you've forgotten what humans look like when they run out of patience, you're remembering now." The Queen stood, her robes flowing like water made solid. "The Janara Empire seconds this proposal. I call for an immediate vote." The vote took 17 minutes. When it concluded, the emergency supply network had been approved by a margin that surprised even Velric. Species who'd remained silent during the initial confrontation now voting in favor, perhaps recognizing their own vulnerability in humanity's ultimatum. Captain Chen's shoulders dropped fractionally, the first sign of the weight she'd been carrying. Princess Liara bounced in her throne. "Does this mean you'll tell me about roses now?" The tension shattered into surprised laughter. Genuine, relieved, slightly hysterical. Even Counselor Thrain's crest flickered with reluctant amusement. Chen approached the throne, knelt before the princess, and smiled. A real smile this time, untainted by diplomatic necessity. "Roses, Your Highness, are flowers that grow on Earth. They have thorns that protect them, but their blooms are so beautiful that people grow them anyway, despite the risk of getting hurt." "They sound like humans," Liara observed with a child's perfect wisdom. "They're exactly like humans," Chen agreed softly. "Beautiful and dangerous and worth the trouble." The Queen rested her hand on her daughter's head, looking down at the human ambassador with something like understanding. "Captain Chen, I have a question." "Your Majesty? Did you truly intend to withdraw from the Council, or was this theater to force our hand?" Chen stood, meeting the Queen's gaze without flinching. "Both, Your Majesty. We were absolutely prepared to leave, and we knew the threat might accomplish what 6 months of diplomatic requests could not." She paused. "Humans are pragmatic like that. We'll burn down the galaxy to save our children, but we'd prefer to build something better instead. And that," the Queen said quietly, "is what makes your species truly dangerous. Not your capacity for violence. Many species share that. But your willingness to destroy what you've built in service of your principles. We've had practice," Chen acknowledged. "Too much practice." Varric watched the two leaders, one ancient, one young by galactic standards, recognize each other across the divide of species and culture. This was how alliances were truly forged, he realized. Not in trade agreements or defense pacts, but in moments when one civilization looked at another and understood that some principles were worth any cost. "Commander Varau," the Queen said without looking at him, "arrange a formal dinner tonight. Captain Chen and I have details to discuss." "And I can come?" Princess Lyra asked hopefully. "You started this, my daughter." The queen's tone was dry but affectionate. "You'll see it through." As the chamber began to empty, species representatives departing in clusters of whispered conversation and shocked planning, Velric remained at his post. He watched Chen gather her materials, watched the queen speak quietly with her advisors, watched Princess Liara swing her legs from the throne with the unconcerned energy of childhood. Later, historians would mark this day as the moment the Galactic Council's power structure fundamentally shifted. They would write volumes about humanity's calculated gambit, about the Janara Empire's unprecedented support, about the emergency protocols that would save countless lives across hundreds of worlds. But Velric would remember it differently. He would remember a child asking about roses, and a human ambassador whose patience had finally run out, and a queen who'd recognized that sometimes the galaxy needed reminding that principles mattered more than procedure. He would remember the day humanity stopped asking for permission and started demanding accountability. And he would remember that every species in that chamber had learned the same lesson. Humans were patient, forgiving, and genuinely interested in cooperation. But only once. Only ever once. The water processors reached Valence Colony 1603 hours later, delivered by human transport ships that had been waiting just outside Council space, prepared for either withdrawal or rapid deployment. The first emergency supply depot went operational within a month. By the end of 6 months, every colony world in Council space had access to emergency resources that could be deployed without a single committee approval. No species forgot the cost of that network. 43 children who died while the Council debated, whose names Captain Sarah Chen recited at the dedication ceremony for each new depot. 87 children total before the systems went live. 87 names that became the foundation of protocols that would, over the next century, save millions. The humans never let anyone forget those names. They carved them into every depot, every transport, every emergency beacon, a reminder. A warning, a promise. This was what happened when humans lost patience. They didn't just demand change, they built it, funded it, and dared the galaxy to stop them. And sitting in the Janara Royal Gardens one evening, Princess Liara listened to Captain Chen describe Earth's roses in loving detail, neither of them aware that their unlikely friendship would become the symbol of a new era in galactic cooperation. "They really do sound like humans," the princess said, touching the holographic image of a red bloom rotating above Chen's tablet. "Beautiful and thorny." "We are," Chen agreed, watching the hologram catch the fading light. "But worth the trouble." Commander Velric, standing watch at a respectful distance, allowed himself the smallest smile. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had taught it well. And somewhere in the endless dark between stars, 87 children rested in peace, knowing their deaths had not been meaningless. Their names would burn in the void forever, a constellation of warning. Humans forgive, but only once.